What if your composites never had recurrent decay? Now, for a lot of us, that sounds like a dream, but today it's become a reality. And that's because Vista Apex Solutions has the world's first dental restorative suite of materials containing Bioglass 45S5. And this is under the product line called Regen. And what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time to explain to you how this Regen works, why it works, and then I'm going to break this up into short segments so that you don't get overwhelmed because there's a lot of information. So part one, I'm going to talk about Regen, and then in part two, we'll talk about the recipe I use to do my direct restoratives using this amazing new product. So one of the things that happens is when we place class 2 restoration, usually in approximately, it is in an area where the patient has had a hard time accessing, keeping clean, or they just don't keep it clean, right? They're not flossing. And bacteria gets in there and causes the cavity. We go in there, we clean up the cavity, and right down where our gingival floor is, it's right by the gum, one of the areas where the bacteria loves to proliferate and produce acid. And so over time, we see recurrent decay. Some statistics say that about 70% of our restorative work is actually replacement of restorations that have recurrent decay on the margins. So what this Apex Solutions did is they came up with a smarter material. Now, there's a lot of materials out there that are called bioactive because there's an exchange of ions, calcium and phosphates typically. But this material is different. It does that and more. Using Bioglass, we can actually create hydroxyapatite. Using Bioglass, we can actually neutralize the acidity, not just try to repair it with calcium phosphate attraction. So let me show you how this works. Here's a beaker, and in this beaker, they have a pH indicating solution. When it's pink, it's basic, which typically means it's healthy, healthier. When it turns yellow, that means it's become acidic. So this is obviously two beakers, and we've kind of merged them together in the video just to kind of show how it works. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this pH indicating solution that right now is basic, so it's pink. We're going to add acid to it, so it's going to go from pink to yellow. And then we're going to see what happens. On the right-hand side of this video is your basic composite filler in there. Like if you just bought something that was non-bioactive, it would fill the hole that you created when you did your cavity prep, but that's about it. On the left-hand side, you've got filler that also has the Bioglass 45S5 in it. So let's see what happens. So what we do is we mix it all up and you'll see the little pipette adding acid to the solution. So the solution goes from pink, which is basic, to yellow, which means it's acidic. The right-hand side of your screen is stained yellow. Why would it change, right? It's got the filler particles in it, but basically that's all it's going to do. The solution itself is acidic because you added acid. The left-hand side, what's happening is they add acid to it, and it goes from from pink to yellow, then back to pink, which is basic. Then they add acid. It goes from the pink to yellow, and then back to pink. What's happening is a Bioglass 45S5 filler in that side of the beaker is neutralizing the acidity. So imagine you put this in your class 2 restoration. Well, it's going to create a more alkaline environment wherever it's placed, which the bacteria doesn't like. But if there is some bacteria that does manage to grow and proliferate, as it produces its byproduct of acid, that acid is going to be neutralized by the Bioglass 45S5, which means less chance of getting recurrent decay. So on the left-hand side, what you're seeing when it goes from pink to yellow, which indicates an acid environment, back to pink, it's going back to basic. That's what you call bioactive glass buffering. And that's what makes this material different than other composites with your typical fillers, is that on the right-hand side, you had a non-bioactive composite filler. On the left-hand side, you had the Regen bioactive filler that was doing this great job. And one of the neat things about using the suite of materials is that you are placing it into the dental tubules, and so it can help the tooth actually heal. And then you're actually placing a reservoir of this bioactive glass with your composite flowable liner down at that bottom of your gingival floor margin to protect this area. Whereas traditional adhesives would block that bioactivity. Where if you place a traditional adhesive with no bioactivity in it, you're sealing up the dental tubules, and then you're placing your bioactive material over there that sure can have that calcium phosphate exchange, but it's not going to happen in the tubules. It's going to happen outside. So maybe it's going to be effective as a restorative material in the calcium phosphate exchange, but it's not going to help the tooth heal. When I'm using this material, I tell the patient, we just removed the decay or remove the old restorative material that was failing. And what we've done is we've cleaned the tooth back up, and I'm going to help the tooth heal by placing a material into the pores of the tooth that will help it heal, protect the nerve. And then we're going to put a filling material over that fills that hole back up. But this filling material is going to help to protect the tooth because it's got special physical properties that will help to neutralize the acid that originally caused that cavity. And the patients are amazed that we're using a material that seems this smart. And they often tell me, hey, I'll pay more for that material than I would a regular material. And I just tell the patients, what we do in our office is we just want to provide the best materials that we can. And so we're keeping up with all the latest in material development. And this is one of the materials that we prefer to use. If I was placing this restoration in a family member, this is the type of material that I'd want to use because I don't want a filling to start out small, then have to be replaced, get bigger, then have to be replaced, get bigger yet. Then we have to go to a crown, maybe a root canal. Eventually that could fracture and we have to go into an implant. So we want to stop that chain of progressive tooth decline right now. Let's keep our restoration small. Let's make sure that the restoration can protect the tooth and we hopefully will not have to replace that as often. So the regen material has this bioactive glass in it, has a bioactive ion exchange, and we can put that into the dental tubules that here is called the area of regeneration. We create a bioactive bond to help protect that tooth, and that composite is going to be a reservoir of the bioactive glass, which helps with all this ion exchange going on, calcium phosphates and the fluoride. That buffering reduces demineralization and keeps the bacteria from proliferating. So we're able to protect this tooth structure in many different ways. I'm going to show you one more thing. Here is some saliva substitute. So it has all the natural ions that saliva would have in it. And there's composite discs, a disc of reg composite and a disc of this bioactive composite. They're suspended in the middle of that beaker, which is going to be mixed for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, those discs are removed. Now, what we'd expect is that a regular composite probably won't be affected by anything in that artificial saliva. Why would it be? But in the bioactive glass composite, it's going to attract the calcium and the phosphate ions, and so we might see the deposition of those on that disc. Now, these discs are suspended in the middle of that beaker, so people can't say, well, maybe the calcium and the phosphate, drifted down and landed on the disc. Well, that usually won't occur because these are small little ions, but just to kind of get rid of that image, they're suspended. That solution is mixed, and we're going to see what the surface looks like after spending 2 weeks being bathed in this salivary substitute. And this is what it looked like. It just sat in the lab, and for 2 weeks it was just mixed. And at the end of 2 weeks, this is what you saw. You pulled out those composite discs. On the left-hand side, you can see the regular composite looks unscathed, right? Nothing's really changed. The surface looks shiny, smooth, just like you'd expect it and hope it would look like. On the right-hand side, though, where we have the bioactive glass, what you're going to see is what that surface looks like after the deposition of the calcium and the phosphate ions. And it's amazing. It looks like an orange peel. So we do see the deposition of ions. It actually attracted the ions to that area like we'd expect it to do when we have our class 2 filling. It's helping to attract ions in that area and to help it heal and to prevent more acid breakdown. So this is just to demonstrate that we're not talking about your typical composite restoration. These are truly bioactive. They're going to help protect the tooth. And next, in part 2, I'm going to show you some studies that shows that in the tooth, we actually see that the margins are protected when we use this bioactive glass. Then I'm going to give you the recipe that I typically use when I'm doing a class 2 using these bioactive materials. So I hope you enjoyed seeing how this material differs from other materials and that this helps you understand how bioactive glass materials work. Now, if you like this information, hit subscribe. We want to still build that subscription level up and hit the like button, both. And put your comments in the chat box because I'd love to hear what you think, if you have any questions, and if this would make you think about using these bioactive materials. So thank you very much, and we will see you during part 2, the next episode of Bioactive Materials.